I really appreciated the conversations that were presented by Julie and James. I like the approach that Robert just took in terms of trying to figure out what was missing, and for me, the idea that evaluating creative growth is, that's wonderful. That's obviously a needed thing, but I'm not convinced that we are looking enough at whose ideas are growing when we're looking at looking to evaluate creative growth. In other words, my bias, my perspective is that all applied creative thinking or activity begins with the social, which is then individualized and interpreted by the individual. So we're looking at something very, very important when we're looking to assess individual achievement. But are we looking at enough at the group, that image that James showed with the classroom context? That's fascinating to me because I've been in classrooms enough to know that what often the exchanges that take place synchronously, in the context of kids working together, an idea can be built or reshaped or interpreted that is collectively assembled, put together, just like a group working in a Lego pile and putting together a group monument, right? But there's some larger questions that I had just in terms of the concept of evaluating creativity. I'm reminded of a radio broadcast that I heard recently where the person who was interviewed said very matter-of-factly, if it can't be measured, it can't be. If it can't be measured, it can't be improved. Unfortunately, if you take that notion that it's got to be measured, or it's otherwise, we've got a problem. Or what happens typically is that folks wash their hands of that activity. It's not important enough because you can't see it numerically on a piece of paper. It becomes irrelevant. It becomes sometimes, and these are some of the questions that came to my mind when I'm thinking about the idea of evaluating creativity. What happens if an individual, if you're looking for individual achievement, what happens if they don't measure up to a particular standard? Is that person marginalized or excluded or simply thought incapable? Regarding this historical practice of numbers never lie, I'd point out that probably like most of you, I've never had or known my creativity score, and yet that has never prevented me from knowing that I could be creative. It's never prevented me from improving my capacity to be creative, and I think that pretty much applies to everybody. Are we really just guessing about creativity happening all around us if we were to assert that every human being is necessarily creative? Just to get by, just to communicate language, just to pursue personal interests or develop career paths, and what's captured in a measurement anyway, in a test score? Is it are we testing individuals' innate and unique creative behavior? Are we testing the consequence of the testing intervention itself? It goes back to that Tigger question, the Tigger problem that James mentioned. So you ask Tigger to jump over the building and to see how creatively he does it, but would he have considered jumping over the building if you hadn't suggested it in the context of the dialogue? So we only have about a minute left, so I just I'm at a place where I think the evaluation of creativity is really very, very, very important, obviously, but I'm always questioning what the results are going to be used for if someone doesn't meet the expectations, because we have a history of what I would call unnatural selection, where those who take tests or distribute tests or assess the meaning of tests then oftentimes track and have tracked folks into certain outcomes in terms of the destiny, which preclude the notion that there is creative growth. So good questions, good conversation, and that's it.